my computer to see it. Tony! Hey, how are you? Bar association. At this proclamation. How you doing? Okay. You working out, sir? It was either no-go or something. You and I are bonding right now. We're bonding. Conversation with Barbara. I talked to her before, and she said, "Well, we're not, BIA. We're not going to send you the letter. We're not send the letter." But no Georgie. Where was Georgie? Georgie boy. We had to pay for his bar association membership without him even knowing about it. I think we had to. Rudy might come and he went to get a flashlight. I think he's looking for something. Our Judge Guy and Judge be careful. I thought Judge Guy was in the middle.
Oh, I was told there were 28, so that's why I have 3. So you may only need 2.
Exactly.
I am
walking. Exactly.
No. I don't need glass.
Yeah. That's it. That's it. Hey, do we don't have Stephanie today? We must. She could be. Doesn't usually work on Wednesdays. Should be a quick one. It's a love fest.
I'm doing well. Good to see you.
I haven't. And I really like you guys do. And also, small little kid. I can't.
This is from the.
Oh, he didn't go to the argument on this? I command. You should. Yes. Justice Council. Will we have meetings about attendance? Yes, that was a big point. Was saying, I think the judge is here.
Mike, you want to do arts and wine, or you want me to do it?
We do arts and wine. I'm going to do resolution of intent. Have we broken enough ground lock laws yet? Is Tony coming up? So you guys got fire? Yeah, I said I'm going to do it. Because someone gave me a That's your reasoning. Because you tell me that we have broken promises.
Rhea, the 2 girls, Leslie and Max, escaped from that thing in the tape was so off the wall. What is discussing then? I don't know. They're taking their course. I just haven't talked to them. James. That's what they want to do.
I know. They seem to be perpetuating this kind of behind the scenes. I mean, the media hasn't really dealing with it as far as looking at it.
I felt really good because
Ashley Monson
I did.
talking about that.
Yeah, I did the same thing. So did Mike. And then we had the thing. They may have it. They may not. But you can't redo this thing online without getting the city involved. Because you could go tackle the narrative.
Sue, are we ready to go now? Are we ready?
Whoa.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Capitola City Council. Thank you, everyone here in the audience, for being in attendance, and everyone who may be watching out on the television. So we'll begin this evening with a roll call. Sue.
Councilmember Norton?
Here.
Councilmember Bottorff?
Here.
Councilmember Termini?
Here.
Mayor Story?
Here. And have we heard from Councilmember Harlan? Is she?
Councilmember Harlan indicated she might be a few minutes late this evening.
She will. Okay. I'll talk slow. Which may be the natural course of things anyway. But the next on our agenda will be the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll ask Councilmember Bottorff to lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Ed. You know, this is September 11th, and it is the 13th anniversary of 9/11/2001, where, you know, the United States was the victim of a very serious terrorist attack. Many people, including first responders, lost their lives in that attack. And we wanted to just take a moment in the beginning of this meeting in a remembrance and a tribute to all those victims who lost their lives, not only in the downing of the World Trade Towers, but as well all the servicemen and women who have served, who have sacrificed in the years after in the war against terror. And I would also like to, you know, take the moment to appreciate and pay tribute to all our first responders who continue to diligently protect our community, who continue to sacrifice in so many ways to serve and protect our community. So if you would, join me in just maybe a minute or so of a moment of reflection. Thank you, everyone. You know, and I think it's important for us to remember that terrible event and remember that even now, 13 years later, that we need to continue to be strong. We need to continue to be vigilant in the fight against terrorism. And I know that somehow, you know, we in Capitola especially, and I think in Santa Cruz, may feel that we're immune from those kinds of acts of terrorism. But we need to be aware that no one is really immune, and both, you know, foreign domestic terrorism, you know, can befall us. So thanks for, you know, our police department, and I think all the law enforcement in Santa Cruz County that play a major part on a daily basis to keep us safe. So thank you for that moment of silence. Next, we have a presentation. You know, Capitola participates in the Criminal Justice Council, and they have brought forth an awareness of the importance of school attendance in preventing juvenile delinquency and youth violence and crime. And, you know, school attendance is probably one of the major indicators of whether a child or youth is likely to fall into a life of crime and violence. So with that, we'd like to do a proclamation designating September as Attendance Awareness Month. And we have some dignitaries here this evening. And I'd like to ask them to come up and to receive this proclamation. And we have Judge Maraganda, who's the presiding judge at the Santa Cruz County Superior Court. Come on up, Judge. Yes. Judge Guy, who's the assistant presiding judge and chair of the Children's Network, and also Harley Robertson. Harley, the assistant superintendent. So here, I'll come out here. Thank you, Sue. And it's a long proclamation. I won't read every single word of it, but I think that we do want to draw attention that September is Attendance Awareness Month. And we all recognize that good attendance is essential to student achievement and graduation, and we are committed to dedicating our resources and attention to reducing chronic absenteeism rates with a focus starting as early as kindergarten. And chronic abuse, missing 10% or more of a school for any reason, including excused and unexcused absences, or just 2 or 3 days a month, is a proven predictor of academic trouble and dropout rates. And chronic absence predicts lower third-grade reading proficiency, course failure, and eventual dropout. It weakens our communities and our local economy. And schools and community partners can reach out more frequently to absent students to determine why they are missing school and what would help them attend more regularly. And schools and districts must do more to track and calculate and share the data on how many students are chronically absent so that we can deliver the right interventions to the right students. And therefore, I, Sam Story, Mayor of the City of Capitola, do hereby proclaim Capitola will stand with the nation in recognizing September as Attendance Awareness Month. We hereby commit to focusing on reducing chronic absenteeism and to give all children an equitable opportunity to learn, grow, thrive academically, emotionally, and socially. And I just want to let everybody know that everyone here in the community can do our part to help and recognize, or if you see kids in your neighborhood that you shouldn't be seeing, and that because they should be in school, I think it's important for us all to be aware of that and try to bring the appropriate attention to the school officials so that we can help those kids recognize the importance of school attendance. And so I want to thank Judge Maraganda for being here and receiving this proclamation. Thank you,
Much, Mayor Story.
Judge Guy. Thank you for bringing this forth for us and helping to support our youth. And Superintendent, thanks for the work you do for bringing this forth. And I'd like to give a proclamation to each one of you. And also, if you would, does anyone like to say a few words? Or
Judge Guy and I are here on behalf of the Superior Court. Judge Heather Morse, who is our longest-serving judge and the presiding judge of our juvenile court, is in charge of this Keeping in Kids in School program. We actually had a kickoff press conference last Friday. And September is this awareness month, and we in the Superior Court are very committed to this program, and we appreciate the City of Capitola standing with us in this most important project, which Keeping Kids in School is the foundation of making sure they do not go through the juvenile system and through the adult criminal system, and makes them more productive citizens in our community. And with that, I'd like to ask Assistant Presiding Judge Guy to say a few words, because the Keeping Kids in Schools program in Santa Cruz County was a project that she helped start when she was the presiding judge of the juvenile court. So with that, Judge Guy?
Sure. Thank you, and thank you, City of Capitola. So just to give you a little background, in December, the Chief Justice of the Superior Court of California, she is the Chief Justice for the largest justice system in the entire world. She asked that all the counties come together and bring delegates as cross-representation from justice and from schools and educators, probation, child welfare, all the different organizations to come together and talk about the issue. And basically a lot of the counties came together, of the 58 counties. Not all of them were even able to participate. And most of the counties brought about 3 to 5 folks. Santa Cruz had 32 people. We were by far the largest delegation in the entire state. And so obviously Santa Cruz is very collaborative. We continue to be so, even more so now that the superintendents have come on full steam onto this project and have been working with Judge Morris hand in hand on this project as well. But we've really seen that our community has come together, and it really is a community issue. It's a community response, and we're hoping that we will be able to identify not only the children who in these early years, if that absenteeism happens, they will be behind full years of their peers, and I've seen the direct consequences of that. But then we'll also be able to identify the families that need the support and the help early on, as opposed to waiting to when the kids are in the juvenile delinquency system and the criminal system. So it's been a wonderful collaboration, a great kickoff of the Office of Education, the superintendents, all of the probation, child welfare, children's mental health, a big collaboration among our counties. It's been very exciting. So I just want to really acknowledge all of the participants, but also the superintendents as well. So I'll hand it off to you, Superintendent.
Excuse me, thank you. We really, so as a representative of our local school district, we really support this proclamation and the support that this proclamation gives our school district and our, most importantly, our students. We had a 96% attendance rate last year. That equates to about an average of 8 days that was the average student loss, if you will, last year. We had been at the 95% level for about 8 years. So last year we got off the dime. We believe that we have a lot of work left to do. We want to be at the 97, 98% level. We believe this, again, this proclamation directly supports our school and most importantly our students, and so we thank Mayor Storey and the City of Capitola with this proclamation.
Thank you, everyone, for being here, for taking the time to come to our meeting to bring attention to this issue. We're honored to be a part of it and help raise awareness and let all the kids know this is how we show support for you, and we want to help you succeed in school and in life. And in order to do that, you need to attend school. So thank you once again.
Thank you
Right.
very much.
Thank you, Judge Guy.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah.
Thank you, Judge.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Harley. See you.
First time my judge said thank you. I feel really good. Not with the bailiff doing this work.
The next item on our agenda this evening is additional materials, and we have no additional materials but the dais this evening. So next we'll move on to additions and deletions to the agenda. Does staff have any additions or deletions? Seeing none, council members? Seeing none. So now we'll move on to public comments. This is opportunities for members of the public to address the City Council on items that are not on tonight's agenda. Does anybody have any communication for the council? Yes, looks like we have one taker.
The Begoniites.
Yes.
Mayor, council, city manager, staff, we are here to celebrate another fabulous Begonia Festival. I'm Lori Hill. I'm president of the Capitola Begonia Festival.
And I'm Teresa Green. I'm the treasurer of the Begonia Festival.
And this year's festival was Begonias on Broadway. And I think you will all agree that we really did kind of bring down the house this weekend. And the Nautical Parade put on quite a show. It turned the entire Nautical Parade more into performance art. It was really spectacular. We are here to thank you, the city, yet again, for your partnership and participation. The city has been a great partner with the Begonia Festival. I'm looking over there at Steve Jesberg. If it wasn't for his crew and Rudy Escalante and the police, all of those folks were so supportive in getting things done for us. We've got, the Art and Cultural Commission hosts 2 of our events. The museum hosts another event. And along with our business sponsors out there, we are able to put on 4 days of entertainment in Capitola Village. New this year was a partnership with Bay Federal. Bay Federal Credit Union actually provided staff for one of our events, the Children's Art. That's the first time we've partnered with a business, and that is something we'd like to expand more next year. We also partnered with Harbor High School. Harbor High School helped us with logistics this year, probably the biggest and hardest need to meet for the festival, and having the youth and the supervision of the youth was really important to the festival. We also had a new event this year. It was the Begonia mural, and credit goes to Teresa Green for coming up with the idea. And she got some help from Nils Westman on some of the engineering of it, and it turned out to be a fabulous event. That's a quote from one of the property owners down in the village I heard today. A fabulous event. We hope to repeat it next year, and we may very well be looking for a new event chair for that event. So we are here tonight to present our thank you gift to the city. This is what we give to each of our sponsors, our high-level sponsors. They're made exclusively for our sponsors, and also a couple posters, if you wouldn't mind taking those up there. And lastly, there was a change in circulation for the festival. It was a modest change. There was some blockades that were put up on Stockton, that between Stockton on Esplanade, between Stockton and San Jose Road, San Jose Avenue, and those. I know I'm supposed to stop, but I'm not going to. And so that small blockage that was put in there was new this year, and it came upon us suddenly. We didn't really know about it, and my first observation is it was a change. It turned out to be a good change. And would encourage us to consider doing that yet again next year. But the one thing I would ask in terms of our partnership is that the Begonia Festival would know about this kind of change in advance of the festival, so that we wouldn't be fielding all the calls and concerns about it, and wouldn't be answering with the wrong answers, which was, we didn't expect any closures of that nature. So that's where I'd like to leave it, other than thank you very, very much. And Teresa, do you have anything you want to add? Thank you.
Well, yeah, thank you very much for that tribute. And the posters, we'll hand this over to the city. Just to let everybody see, and everybody in the audience be able to see, here's the proclamation. It's very beautiful, beautiful tile. And Lori and Teresa, it was a stellar and tremendous event. And so thank you so much for your volunteer work to help carry that off. It's a tremendous amount of work that all the volunteers do to make that come off. And so that everybody can, and everybody did, have a wonderful time. It was a wonderful theme, and it was truly like watching Broadway down the Soquel Creek. And also to Mike Termini for being one of the MCs. You did a wonderful job, Mike. Just really add to the flavor of the entertainment to that particular event. And so, well, congratulations and thank you from the city for making it possible. Right. What, do you have a theme for next year yet?
Well, no, in January,
Okay.
But the festival committee sets up the stage, and it's the community that comes out and plays, and we want to see that happening again for the 63rd annual next year.
Wonderful. And to all the volunteers, I know there are many that aren't here, all the participants that help build floats, pick begonias, everyone and all the staff that help coordinate and bring it together. It truly does take a village on that one. Any other public comments? Seeing none, I'm going to close that portion of our meeting. We'll move on to City Council, City Treasurer, staff comments. Chief, you're inching your way up to the microphone. And that's, well, I mean, come on up.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I kind of wanted to just update you on a couple of items in the fireworks show that is going to be occurring next month. So staff's been working with the vendors and fire and coastal commission and people on the wharf, and we discovered an event that kind of coincided, and so we had to move the fireworks show to Saturday night, October 11th. And we were fortunate enough that everybody involved was very cooperative. There was a large wedding reception that was actually occurring on the wharf with people coming from out of state. And so there were many issues in regards to flights and hotels, and it was just a really complicated situation. But we were fortunate enough that everybody was willing and wanting to find another date as soon as possible. And so the fireworks show is actually going to occur on October 11th. Bless you. And so we're really looking forward to it. The police department has been having regular meetings to discuss the traffic plan. It seems that we're probably going to utilize the wharf-to-wharf plan that we have used in the past. Obviously, it'll be a much shorter time frame. So we've got a good plan in place by following the design of the wharf-to-wharf. And we'll be able to shoot the fireworks off from the middle of the wharf. And so we've been working with the vendor. They actually, the fireworks vendor came out from New York and took their measurements and met with the fire marshal. And so things are progressing well. And I think we're going to have I think it's going to be a very nice event.
Other questions from council members? Seeing none, thank you for that update and report, Chief.
You're welcome.
Mayor, if I could also have a comment?
Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to update the council and residents that today we had the construction walkthrough for the McGregor Park and have officially started construction out there. The contractor has started mobilizing. We did the walkthrough, made a few tweaks to the plans, and they're planning to start in earnest next week with grading and removal of the trees. So we're on schedule and moving forward with that. We will be coming to the council, I believe, at the next meeting with information regarding the bike park design and the skate park design and the contracts for that. So we're happily moving forward on that. I'd also like to update the council on the Stockton Esplanade project. Bowman and Williams and I are furiously trying to finish that design. We've run into more grade issues and ADA issues than we anticipated when it was last year. We will be coming to the council. We need you to have a final approval and authorization to go to bid. We will be coming to you as quickly as we can on that and going out to bid and building it later this year. So that's the status of that. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve, for those updates. Any other staff comments? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Story. I just wanted to mention that there's an opening for a Capitola representative on the Community Television of Santa Cruz County Board of Directors. And the person should be familiar with the function and mission of community television. And they meet every other month in the evening in Santa Cruz. So if anyone's interested, please contact the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other staff comments? Treasurer comments?
No comment.
Council members?
Yes.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you for including me in the Begonia Festival. It is the most enjoyable event I do in Capitola without a costume on in the entire year, so thank you very much. Oh my goodness. Okay. I'd like to remind everyone that Art and Wine is this weekend, but Dennis is going to give some more details on that. The library parcel tax is moving along. We're determining our needs. It means a really incredible boost in what Capitola can get as far as their library services. It increases the size of our library, and certainly it will increase the aesthetic appeal of it. The difference between $2.5 million and $10 million is a lot of money. So this could go well. And finally, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to respectfully request that at our next meeting, we put on the agenda a resolution of intent. Since Measure M is going to the voters, I believe that because it was not agendized, I couldn't include a resolution of intent with the original proposal to put it on the agenda or put it on the ballot. But I think now, since it's on the ballot, it's time to consider and take a stand on where we propose to use that money. So I'd like to request that go on to our next agenda, second meeting in September.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Yeah, if staff can note, we'll want to agendize that for the last meeting in September.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome. Thank you. Any other council comments? Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm late.
You want to go, Stephanie, or you got something you want to?
No, thank you.
Okay. Dennis?
I have a couple of different things to go over. Our city's biggest visitor, the one that comes by ocean to us, as we've heard over the last 2 to 3 years, that there's a difficulty with the netting and dragging of pots on the back of mammals on Monterey Bay and also in the whole Pacific coast of California. Well, a local resident just invented an app that is called the Whale app. And what it is that at any time that you see a whale in distress, you can dial in this app and it'll GPS locate you. And what it'll do is it'll send a crew out to help and assist that whale. So it's anybody who visits or frequents the ocean, this would be something they should carry with them. And it's becoming more and more frequent thing, and particularly since we see whales coming in closer, particularly into crab areas and also fish netting areas. And so, thank you for doing that. The person that put that together, I think that's a real plus for the whales. It's unfortunate this happens, but it does. And so, we as the land people have to take care of those big neighbors we have out in the ocean. This weekend, as you know, is the Arts and Wine Festival. Saturday and Sunday, all day. And what it does is this weekend, 150 artists, 23 wineries, gourmet food, great entertainment, and it's actually a fundraiser for the Chamber of Commerce, SoCal Chamber of Commerce, and SoCal High Schools. And SoCal High Schools is one of the main beneficiaries for their water polo program and their music programs. SoCal High Girls Softball, Harbor High Leadership Program, and the Santa Cruz High's Girls Softball. So all 3 high schools benefit in their high school baseball programs. Pacific Collegiate Dance Program and Family Network Services Adoption Agency are also beneficiaries. This is a 32nd annual Arts and Wine. It's the most popular, and you can ask any artist that comes to it, Arts and Wine Festival in the whole state of California. It may not be the biggest, but it's certainly the most popular by people who come to it, and also the local artists. There's going to be a children's art area. Come down. It's fun for everyone. You don't have to drink wine. You come down and just mingle with people who live in your community and enjoy this wonderful weekend that happens on a regular basis in Capitola. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Yes, Stephanie.
I did have one. We're making council announcements.
Sure.
Wasn't sure where we were. I did go to the first meeting of the Friends of the Soquel Cemetery, and they're just getting organized and just trying to see what's there and what might be possible. And our wonderful museum director gave a short history of the Evergreen Cemetery in Santa Cruz. And that might be an example of what this route might like to follow, where they had the cemetery. They didn't have any money coming in because there weren't any more people coming in to pay to come there. And so it was what it was. They were running out of money. That was getting overgrown, weeds, not kept up, and so forth. And so a community volunteer took it over and just started raising money and getting volunteers, the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, go out there and weed, and did a lot of public education and developed brochures and a friends group. And, over 5 or 10 years, it changed and was taken over by the Museum of Art and History. So now it really is owned by the community. They still do fundraising, they still do volunteers, but they have a place where people can donate if they want to. They lead tours, they lead I think I mentioned it one year, a Halloween tour, a Halloween evening. You can go out there and with the ghosts and they give wonderful tours. Anyway, that might be something they'll look at. But it's going to be fun. And there's a lot of our local people there that we should honor and try to take care of. So I'll keep you posted.
Right. Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you for attending on behalf of the city. So I believe, Dennis, I did the app. How do people access it or look it up? Is there a particular name or?
I think we actually could put it on the city's website, but it's called the Whale app, and you can go in
the App Store and just type in whale, it comes up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be accessible to everyone.
Great. Thank you.
Next, we'll go to the consent calendar. These are items that will be handled with one vote unless an item is pulled by a member of the public or by a council member. We just have two items this evening. One is to approve the minutes of the August 14th meeting of the City Council. The other is the Planning Commission action minutes for September 4th. Does any member of the public wish to pull one of these items?
I'll
Seeing
move
none,
consent.
Council, we have a motion to approve. Is there
Second.
a second? There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously, which will bring us to the general government public hearing portion of our meeting this evening. And the first report is concerning the Esplanade Park water conservation options. The recommended action in the staff report is to accept the report and provide direction to staff on water conservation options at Esplanade Park. Steve, you're going to
I'd be happy to,
plunge
Mayor.
into this
Thank
one
you
for
the
us?
opportunity. We're here to talk about water conservation at Esplanade Park, but I wanted to give the public a chance to hear what we've done citywide to conserve water and where we are, and then we'll focus on Esplanade Park. So the city's been implementing water conservation projects for over 7 years at this point. We started with the removal of the sod on the medians on 41st Avenue. We've since then removed sod on other medians, put in drought-tolerant landscaping on those medians. We've replaced all the plumbing fixtures throughout all of our facilities with low water use fixtures. And we've removed or reduced sod in various parks and facilities where we thought it was applicable. Just looking at the first 8 months of 2013 versus the 8 months of 2014, we've reduced our consumption by 32% citywide. That's over 1.5 million gallons. Actually, it's just under 1.5 million gallons of water that we have reduced in 8 months last year compared to this year. We do try, though, to continue to maintain our essential services, such as safe playing fields and service to visitors, where water is a little more essential than it is. We're trying to eliminate it where we can so that we can keep our playing fields green, and things like the Esplanade showers are probably the biggest one operational during these water tough times. Looking at Esplanade Park, we have three direct uses of the water there. We have the very high use public restrooms, probably some of the highest in the county. All of those have either low flow or no flow fixtures installed in them. We have 3 lawn areas that we are attempting to maintain. That'll probably be the emphasis of our discussion tonight. And we have the outdoor showers. All the outdoor showers have been retrofitted with low flow fixtures. They're all on timers so that they turn on for 15 to 20 seconds and then shut off, so they can't be left on. We think we're doing everything we can there, as far as as we all know, a very high use park. So looking at the water use, again, just at Esplanade Park in 2013 and 2014, you can see we've only managed to reduce it a little. I think that's to be expected. I think most of the water use there is the bathrooms and the showers, where it's hard for us as a city to regulate that use and try and reduce it more than we have. We have reduced the irrigation on the 3 lawn areas, and as I'm sure we all know, the lower 2 lawns are for the most part dead at this point. Dirt and sand is probably the better description for them. We are trying to, this fall, if we get some water, and depending on what decisions we make here in this meeting and future meetings, if they remain, we'll try and get that lawn going a little better. But it's still, during the dry summer months, it's very hard to keep those lawns alive. The upper lawn area does seem to be surviving with minimal water use at this point. So I know we all know it, but just for the television audiences who don't know, we're looking at an aerial of Monterey Park, or Esplanade Park here. This is the upper park area. It is a 2,600 square foot lawn up here. It's mainly used for picnicking and sunbathing and enjoying the view from up on the upper part. We have what I call the beach area park. It's an 1,800 square foot lawn. It has trouble with collecting sand. We do end up having to rebuild it about every 3 to 5 years because of the amount of sand buildup on it. It is probably the most high-use park area we have. It gets surfboards stored on it, gets tents put on it, it gets dogs on it. It's very high use and very maintenance intensive to keep that lawn going. And then we have a much smaller area. This is the shower stalls here. Much smaller area between the showers and the Britannia Arms restaurant. This is the Britannia Arms restaurant patio area. This lawn, this lower part down here adjacent to the trees does get surfboards and wetsuits and things stored on it from people as they're showering or waiting to go in as they're unloading their cars here. The back area is pretty low use. So moving forward, looking at options. The current capital improvement program includes a $30,000 budget for a conservation project. When we first envisioned this, included it in the CIP, most of us were thinking of a water recycling system where we'd capture the water in the showers and use it to irrigate the lawns. Since the approval of the CIP in July, we have done some testing and some measuring. We tested the salinity of the water. There was concerns that because everybody's washing their salt water off their surfboards and off their bodies, we would have a salt problem. It is very high, but it's probably still, it's right at that top where if we get much more salt water in there, it would kill what we irrigated with it. But right now, we think we're okay, and it could be used for irrigation. In July, toward the end of July, we installed a flow meter to identify the actual flows in the going out of the shower. And over the 43 days from July 22nd to Labor Day on September 1st, surprisingly, we only used 86 gallons per day there. It was peaked at about 131, I think, and lows of the 50s, probably different days. I mean, this is our peak period down there. We have junior guards going on. We've got hot summer weekends, and still we averaged 86 gallons per day there. Currently, we've done another meter reading just 2 days ago since the staff report was written. Since Labor Day, we've had a full week and another weekend. We're down to 37 gallons a day. So as you can see, the water fixtures there, I think, are very efficient. And the timers, and maybe it's not as high as we expected. Based on the 86 gallons per day, if we were to recycle that water and in essence reduce our water use, it would be a savings of $250 a year. I don't think it's necessarily just the economics that we should look at. It's you know, we need to be a good steward with conserving water where we can, and I think it's worthwhile to try and do what we can to recycle the water, even if it doesn't make sense in a cost-benefit scenario. So looking at the water demand for the lawns, I did some research, and everywhere I've went said you need about 1 inch to 2 inches of water on top of lawns per square foot. So I just did some quick calculations of what our estimated weekly amount would be. For the lawn along the beach, we'd need 1,500 gallons a week, which is about 2.5 times what we get out of the showers. Nicely, the small lawn next to the showers, which would probably be the easiest to build a recycle system, is almost exactly the amount we'd need. And the upper park is about 4 times the amount we're getting out of the showers at this point. So I thought I'd run through some options. We came up with, I believe, 5 options. They certainly aren't all the options, but to start the conversation going. So one was to do a full recycling system. We would capture the stormwater. We would supplement it with potable water. So when there wasn't enough shower water to irrigate, we'd have it enough. I estimate that redoing the system we have and redoing the irrigation as we would need to be about a $20,000 to $30,000 project. With that, we anticipate that we would be able to, keep the lawns green year-round. We would still need to replace the beach lawn, as we call it, on a regular basis just due to the sand buildup. Option 2 would be remove the lawns altogether and either replace them with artificial lawns or other permeable surfaces. We've done a quick estimate, and it looks like the artificial lawn just along the beach is estimated to cost $10,000. We didn't get prices for the other areas or other materials in there, but certainly we could work on that if that's the council's direction. Obviously, there's somewhere between the two here, a mixed system. We could put in a smaller recycling system. Like I said, it's closest to where the shower is for the small lawn by the showers, and then remove or replace or do something else with the other lawns. A smaller recycling system would probably cost in the $10,000 to $15,000 range. And then the cost of what we decide to do on the other lawn areas would obviously be dependent on that decision, how we want to treat them. Because the amount of shower water isn't that is maybe high as we all anticipated, we could keep the existing system. Talking with Soquel Creek Water, it's likely that they'll define that lawn as a functional lawn, meaning it's high-value lawn, given its location, the amount of people in it. And right now, they haven't adopted anything, but they're looking at probably some kind of program where we would get an allocation for irrigating that lawn. And we could use, if we went over that allocation, obviously it would cost us more, but they would try and give us enough water where we could keep the lawns going because of their high value. And then fifth option, which is kind of a step back and take a look at the whole park. Certainly over the years we've talked about, or at least at staff level, we've talked about the existing layout of the park with the bandstand added to the park several years ago. The use of it as a bandstand and the location of the trees and the diseases in the trees. It may be time to look at, do we want to do a redesign of the park and come up with a better design that may work. If we did that, then we'd probably find areas where we could put native landscaping, drought-tolerant landscaping in it, have other areas of some kind of shade, some other areas for people to store their surfboards and things like that. I'm not sure I have a vision in my head yet, but I know there's people out there who have thought about it. I estimate a preliminary park design, just so we could start talking about it, would be under $7,500. I think that's kind of the maximum cost here at this point. So those are the 5 options we came up with. Certainly other options or combinations of these options are possible, and the council may want to consider them. So our recommendations tonight are for you guys to get some feedback from those in the public and discuss it amongst yourselves and then provide staff with some direction. I kind of see the direction being provide a scope for a preferred project. Tell us what you guys are thinking. It may be more than one you want us to go back and get more detail on. We can certainly do that. We'd then come back with an updated cost and establish some project deadlines or timelines. So that's my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Other questions? Yes, Mike.
2 questions, Steve. Have you considered using the shower water to flush the toilets in the bathrooms?
We could do that.
I know it's not a lot of water, but
right.
It seems like it's a better use, and it could be augmented with rainwater or some potable water. And,
yeah.
And it's marginal for watering, I'm sure, because we have a salt problem with keeping grass alive with the salt there as it is.
I know we looked at it at City Hall. I mean, it's such a small amount of water. Again, we'd have to look at it. I think there's some additional separation because certainly we would have to augment it with the potable water in order to keep the toilets flushing. So water gaps and things like that would have to be looked at, but that's certainly something we could look at.
And secondly, the $10,000 option, I'm very in favor of making it all artificial turf. I think it's the only rational thing to do. That $10,000 number, we all know there's artificial turf and there's artificial turf. There's a broad range of the quality. And we're talking about something with some depth, with some substructure, with some filler. So because it's used, like you said, it's walked on, things are laid on it constantly.
Yes, it's not just the green carpet.
Thank you very much.
It may not be the highest quality. You know, and we talked to a couple vendors and got some prices for.
Well, there's sports field quality.
Right.
There's green carpet, and then there's everything in between.
Yes, and we're aiming for somewhere in between.
Perfect. Thank you. I have no other questions. Thank you, Mr. Bear.
Thank you. Any other questions from council members?
I have a couple.
Yes, Ed, go ahead.
2 questions. Do you have any idea approximate of the cost for repairing the sod in those 3 locations?
Well, we could do it with our own crews, without the labor costs, because we have those already, we're only talking probably a couple $1,000s to redo. They would come in and excavate the lawn and then roll out sod where it's not a great expense.
For all 3 areas, or just
No, I think it's just the 2 lower
2.
areas. The upper area is doing pretty
stable?
good, actually,
So to replace the lower area is approximately $2,000
per lawn. I think that'd be a safe.
per lawn. And the other one is, as far as with our water rate that we're charged, I don't know if it's a fair question, but I'm just trying to figure out if you know what our acre-foot charge is that SoCal Water charges us.
I can look it up. I don't know. It's around, with the $250 savings, I calculated it was I think it's a little under $6 per unit, so that's per 100 cubic feet of water.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions from council members? Steve, I had a question about the estimated water requirement to water those lawns. It seems really high. Is that what we've been, in your experience, that's how much water we use to water those lawns?
I will admit that I talked with landscape architect Mike Garnone, and he thought they were on the high side also. Like I said, I did some research, and everywhere I said was 1 inch to 2 inches of water per week on the lawn. I used 1.5 inches. I could try and refine that number.
Okay, and I would just, if there's types of grass or types of lawns that maybe don't require as much water, but yeah, just a thought there. But I guess at this point, I think I'll open it up to members of the public that may want to address the council on the proposals here, or any other ideas that anyone may have. Seeing none, I'm going to bring it back to the council for further discussion and then find some directions as staff. Yes, Mike.
Well, as I've already stated, I think that the only rational thing to do is to replace all 3 lawns, use artificial turf. I've observed the condition of the lawns right now, if you can call them lawns, and they are used considerably. I don't know that going back to sod again just means we've taken on another water responsibility. We're seeing artificial turf going in everywhere right now, and I think that anything except either artificial turf or sod doesn't do the public and our visitors any justice. It's junior guard land down there. I mean, the lower and the upper, all summer and winter for that matter, the kind of winters we're getting. So I'd like to see staff go forward and get estimates for all 3 lawns being artificial, and then also bring us estimates for recapture of the shower water for flushing of the toilets.
Or landscaping.
Well, what landscaping? If we go to artificial turf, then we're done.
Is there any other area that we could use that for the businesses down there to landscape? I mean, they have landscaping.
Slightly salty, remember. We have a marginal quality of water to give to rooting plants.
Around the palm tree. Do we irrigate that?
That's a separate irrigation system, so certainly we'd have to make those cross connections. And
we could look into it. We may be able to run a little bit over there to take care of those uses.
I think I mean, no matter what we do with you're looking at tens of thousands of dollars to put in any kind of recycle
I know. I mean, what was
system.
suggested to us previously was to take it over to Lawn Way and to use that water to water Lawn Way. And so, at least let's look at it. And so with the cost, it may be prohibitive, but at least let's look at it so we can say we looked at it.
And it's very enlightening to see how little water is used at 37 gallons a day for those showers. I would have thought it would be much higher, and much higher than 87 gallons in the summer. It seems like people are always there using it.
Maybe remarkable. It's freezing cold. We'll have to try it.
We'll make it colder. I don't know.
Do keep in mind that with the water recycling, from a pure cost-benefit standpoint, there's other places where we could invest the amount of money elsewhere in the city. It really would get down to a message, a message that we're posting on those showers that says the water from here is being recycled. And that would have to be, the council would have to determine that message is valuable in and of itself. Because if you're talking about that amount of water, obviously there's other places in the cities where that kind of investment would get us more savings.
Right. We need to look at the biggest bang for our buck, obviously, but let's just look at it here, too, to see.
Yeah. Dennis?
I find it ironic that we're talking about 3 lawns and a shower when we have 40,000 customers out there that are on water rationing or starting to water rationing. We have a lowering water table out there. You know, this, it doesn't seem like it's the best for our discussion. I think we should be talking on a larger scale. But I'm going to take a little different tactic than Mike. I think that I would call those lawns high-value lawns. In other words, they're used by probably the highest number of people for any lawn in all of Capitola, without question, particularly by beach users, surfers, lanes, and junior guards. To have some value and beauty in those few square foot of lawn is something the community should have pride on. I'll gladly, I gave my front lawn up. I mean, most of us will. Someday we'll call that park there the lawn zoo. It's the only place left with remnants of what that time period was like. But I take a different tack. I think we should save those lawns. I think they're very valuable to the community. They're the highest use, and like the term that Steve gave us, the high value lawn, I think that fits perfectly. I mean, the community's already giving up their lawns at their homes. They understand that. But I think that if you talk around, I think that we don't necessarily, we are setting an example with Jade Street Park and other areas within our community that we're given the parkland. I'll be happy to give up portions of Monterey Park or those areas before I'd give up this, because this is the highest use, it's the highest valued area that we have. And so, and I also support the idea of relooking staff's recommendation, the possibility of relooking at a new design for that park. We've been talking about it for a number of years. I think there is 2 preliminary designs done. I know that RRM did it with a village plan, and I think Mark Arnone actually did a design. So we have 2 to start with. That maybe is a good time to start in that evolution. So if we kept the lawns, and we don't invest the $30,000, we don't change the water system, what we do is we redesign the park and move towards a rebuilding of that park that shows water conservation measures, adequate planning and design for people use in that park. And we do nothing at this point. I don't think we have to do anything. I think that there's a lot of pride in that little park down there. And I think it'll be taken away somewhat by doing artificial lawn. Artificial lawn is not the same. Go lay down on an artificial lawn and go lay down on a real lawn. They're completely different. And with the amount of use that we get by the community today, that ground's not Holy Land, but close to it. And Tiki will tell you that. So,
thank you, Dennis. Ed, you want to weigh in here?
Thank you. Yeah. This is a very important topic to me. This was my idea to bring this to the council when we came there. And in fact, I encouraged the city to put the meter in there, and I'm a little disappointed, unfortunately, that it's only 600 gallons that was used. But the fact is, if that's what it is, that's what it is. So it's really not a solution for us to use the shower water to irrigate the lawns. And it would be probably, unfortunately, I think it would be even worse to try to use it to do the toilets, because I'm sure the demand for the toilets is going to far exceed what the showers use. I agree with Dennis. I'm embarrassed by the way the lawns look in the Esplanade. It's one of our signature areas. We have this beautiful bandstand. We have these events, and it looks hideous. But at the same time, I'm conflicted by the water dilemma that we're suffering. And the only way we're going to get through this water dilemma is to take some kind of drastic action. I believe it's going to take a completely different way we think. And that's why I propose this type of system where we could capture water. And I'm still a believer in that system. I think there's other ways, and one of the ones I looked into recently is I went up to the city of Scotts Valley, and they are in the process of getting ready to sell recyclable water. And if we were to have a system, which I believe would be a tank that we installed into that area, we could buy 5,000 gallons of water, recycled water, for $50. And the need that we see on this chart is 5,000 gallons will irrigate the park for a month. And I also think that if we did this, if we went to some kind of a tank system, there's probably a possibility that we could even run a line across the street and be able to irrigate Lawn Way. I don't think the solution is to tear out our lawns. I think those lawns in those areas are critical lawns. They get more use per person than one person on their front lawn. And I could address the person in the town that's letting their lawn die, saying we're going to provide a place where they can use, but getting the recycled water, we still have to make some kind of arrangement to have that water delivered here. But it's a system that they're developing right now. I went and talked with the water district. It's not online yet, but their proposed fee rate is 5,000 gallons for $50, which seems like a bargain to me. With regards to artificial grass, my neighbor next to me's lawn is bigger than the lawn in the Esplanade, and it's artificial. And it looks absolutely gorgeous. And the reason it looks gorgeous is that nobody ever uses it.
No dogs.
No dogs, no people. It's one of those vacation rentals, so I never see anybody on it, and it looks gorgeous. But the fact of the matter is that you can walk into our bathrooms in the Esplanade at any given time, and we have crews clean them relentlessly, and there's paper, trash. We deal with just public use of a facility. And my fear of artificial grass in the Esplanade would be dogs, people, spilled soda, bubble gum. We would pay $10,000 and it would look fabulous for about a month, and then we would have this maintenance nightmare. So I'm not a big fan of the artificial grass. What I'd really like to do is do some kind of an estimate. I'd like to see us direct staff to do an estimate of what it would cost to put in a tank, which was our original plan. Original plan from the shower was we would put in a tank that would catch all this overflow from the shower, and we'd be able to use it to pump into the irrigation. And we got approval from the water district. There were no red flags. The salinity was a little high. And now I'm even more encouraged, because if we only bring in 600 gallons from the showers and we were to truck in 5,000 gallons of recyclable water and we combined those two, we'd have 5,500 gallons. The saline level would be less, and it would be enough to water both facilities. The only question is, how much does it cost us to put in this system, and are we willing to? It's maybe not going to be cost effective or seem really good, but it's going to be sending a message that we're taking a serious look at how we water. And our capability to do this, we could do a system like this at Cortez Park. We could do a system like this at other areas where we use tremendous amounts of water. So I would rather just have direct staff look at, is this a feasible way for us to irrigate the areas that matter to us and still send a message that we're not using the drinking water to keep our city green?
Thank you.
Not to muddy things up even further, but there is also the gray water from the lavies in the bathrooms it can be utilized for the flushing. That's a really simple, direct system. And there are better turf options with artificial than your neighbors, trust me. And the $50, I've researched the $50 per 5,000 gallons. That's not delivered. That's at the plant.
No, that's just for the water.
I know. So getting it here, loading up a truck, running a truck from Scotts Valley, and I'm not a big waiver of the flag for carbon offsets, but we are definitely going a little backwards, trucking water around the county. I don't know. Like I said, I'm conflicted by it. Maybe I'm just a black and white kind of a guy and say, oh, there's no more higher maintenance lawn that we have in the whole city than the one in front of the beach. It's constantly being tended to. It's constantly being ripped out and put back in. The sand buildup. It is a poster child for high-quality artificial turf, at least in that one area, to see how it works. People don't lay on the grass there. Surfboards lay on the grass there. Bathing suits lay on the grass there. Beach chairs and blankets are put out for the concerts. It's not what you call, lazing in the grass kind of a place. So, just a thought.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Stephanie, yes.
I can make an argument for taking a real short shower and watering my little grass in my backyard. I took out all the stuff in the front. It was pretty awful anyway, So I bought a nozzle for the hose not too long ago at Orchard Supply, and the fellow said, "Where are you getting the water?" I said, "From my hose." Anyway, we all make choices, and normally I couldn't get too excited about AstroTurf, that we used to call it, but if we want green, that's what we really have to start looking at. And we really need to start getting away from watering landscaping and grass, especially grass. I know it's a real high value to the community, but I'd like to, I'm not prepared to make a decision tonight, but just come back with the choices, come back with the information, come back with the cost of all these things. And it may just lay out that, oh, that one's just prohibitively expensive. But after going to the league conference this last week, and getting a sort of a state perspective, of the reservoirs in California. When you look at the map of California and you look, they have a little box for each reservoir in California, and they tell you this one's 19% of capacity, this one's 20% of capacity, this one's 23% of capacity this year, and you take, see that picture. So everybody's getting on board to see what we can do to use recycled water, because that water's there, and I certainly support that. Whatever we can do, and I've asked the sanitation district to start looking at our water here. And before it goes to Santa Cruz, can we look at, not today, but sometime in the near future, can we capture any of that water to use for landscaping in Mid-County area? Because it's here, why should we send it to Santa Cruz if, for ultimate disposal, if we can somehow treat it here and use it here? We've got Cabrillo, we've got parks, we've got Capitola, we've got, with our parks, Jade Street and so forth, and there's some irrigation needs that, that we have here that we might be able to use with all the water that's generated here in Mid-County. So, I understand the value of the lawns, but I think we need to look at everything, and if we can, definitely need to reuse that water for whatever we can reuse it for, if it's financially feasible, and make that area look really nice. But I'm not against looking at artificial turf now, even though I know it costs a lot. But you just can't. It's real hard to make an argument for grass these days when you talk to people, and even in public places. The public at the conference that I talked to, they were all talking about changing their landscaping. If they hadn't done it already, it's just there because people just don't have the water anymore. So I'm anxious to see what all these things are going to cost, what our choices are, what our possibilities are. But I support Mike's initial concept at first. Just go for the artificial grass. It'll be green. We'll get nice. We don't have to get the Lexus version, but we can get something really nice. There's two houses on Crystal that have it. One has a medium and one has the real expensive version, so people can look at that. And there's, hopefully we'll be seeing more around town, but I think appreciate really staff looking at all this and metering it and, really trying to have a plan here, because that's what we're being asked for. That's what cities are being asked for today. What's your water conservation plan for the city and for your residents and your businesses, and what are you doing? That's just a real big overarching topic in California right now. And what's this state water bond on the ballot measure going to mean? We all need to read about that and see whether we're going to be eligible for any funds to apply for any assistance. But that's the state perspective now, is really to try to change things where we can afford to do it. May not be able to do it all today or tomorrow, but maybe down the road, change a little bit here, and then add a little more artificial turf next year, or the year. Maybe have to do it something in this year's budget, something in next year's budget. It's a multi-year project. That's fine, but we'll get to where we want to go then.
All right, thank you, Stephanie. And in closing, I have a few remarks. And first, Ed, thank you for bringing this before us. Having this analysis done. I think it's important that we do this, and unfortunately I think that the council and the city is going to be talking about this at many different locations. And certainly, as Stephanie mentioned, I think all options need to be left on the table, and I think staff need to bring back and study the possibilities of artificial turf. I have concerns about that, one being sanitary. How do you keep it clean if it's not being watered? And how do we deal with that? I've heard from people who have experienced artificial turf. There's issues about the heat retention of artificial turf. I think that's something that we should seriously look into. I think it's something that needs to be seriously studied and looked at before we make the investment and go there and then realize it really doesn't work for the public. No one can use it. And which brings up the other issue. Currently, dogs are allowed on those grassy areas as long as they're on a leash. Are we still going to allow that if it's artificial turf? So how do you deal with that with an artificial surface? I think that needs to be studied. Does it then become no dogs allowed, if that should be the case? Certainly with the reclamation and recycling and gray water systems, we need to study that. I think we need to do it here.
no matter whether it can be used for just a part of the lawn, and hopefully maybe looking at maybe finding, grass that is not so water intensive or water need intensive, and seeing if there's a possibility to use that for irrigate, landscaping, part of a lawn, all the lawn, flushing the toilets. I think staff should look at that. What are the best options for reclaiming water and reusing water? And I think not only does it send a message to the public, it saves some money, and it gets us into the practice of learning how to do those and how to do them effectively and efficiently in other parts of the city. Now, on the lawn areas, I'm looking at this overview, and one thing that I think that we should also, I would like to ask the council to put on the table and have staff look at. We're trying to create a lawn right in front of the beach. Why not have beach in front of the beach? And so if the natural tendency is for the beach to take over, why don't we let nature take its course and have it become the beach? So it's the pre-beach. So is there a possibility of just having it be sand? It can be nice sandboxes or whatever. And so now there's still the issues of dogs. We don't allow dogs on the beach. We know for reasons. Does that, if we make this the pre-beach, the sandy pre-beach, do we need to change our dog policies concerning that? And how is that different from if it were artificial turf? So I think that that could certainly be a possibility of, the way the diagram is here, looks like a beach as it is. If it's mostly used for surfboards for people to put there. Now, the area over there by the shower, I think people like the grass because, they're trying to get away from the sand at that point. And so if we had some other surface where people are trying to clean off, get the sand off of them, maybe that shouldn't be beach back up there against the Britannia Arms. So now my last thought is about the overall park design. And I think at some point maybe it will be done. I think it may be premature if we lead into that before the hotel project even comes forth, even becomes a design. I think it may be better to wait and see how this all integrates and fits together. Now that's made on the impression that there's something that's going to happen maybe in the near future, something will come forth from the developer. I think that maybe we should wait a little bit before we do an overall park design, and then we can do something in maybe coordination with the developer, but certainly something that will fit in with that overall design down there in the Esplanade. So those are my thoughts. Does anybody feel that we need to make a motion? Dennis? Yeah.
I think that if we're directing staff to go back and look at this, we need to give them clear definition of what our questions are. We don't want to spend hundreds of hours in 6 different directions on this thing. We need some direction to give him, number one, and number two is that what we expect him to come back with.
Well, maybe if I could make an effort. Everybody's hands went up, but
A question.
Yeah. Oh, sure, go ahead.
Steve, to draw up some kind of a recapturing system, would you have to pay someone to draw a plan? Would it require money to do that, or would it be something you'd be able to put together
For a recycle system such as you described, for
such as I described, right?
I think I could come up with some costs and some rough diagrams. Sizing and things like that would be, probably need some assistance at that point. I'd like to add, since I've got the mic for a moment, that with the idea of putting a large tank in there, it does afford us the opportunity to actually capture rainwater off of the roofs and use it. Now the rainwater, that'll last us maybe a month once we get to the dry season, then we could augment it, but that would be another option, as we would capture the rainwater.
Save a couple months worth of deliveries.
Yes. Yes.
Maybe we can find out what it really costs to deliver 5,000 gallons of water, because I have a feeling the water's $50 and the delivery's $500.
Yeah.
It's just the way these things, I know from dirt.
I called the company today. They didn't get back to me in time to have that number.
The dirt's free.
I wanted
$500.
to have the number. Okay.
And also, the turf at the Soquel High in the center of the track, go up there and walk around on that with your shoes off. Yeah, it's amazing. And the heat, they've eliminated the heat retention situation.
Good.
Steve, have you, for the grassy area next to the showers, are you familiar with No-Mo fescue, the stuff they're using in lawns and shopping centers now?
I've seen it before. They have it in front of Nob Hill along
Right,
Bay Avenue.
it's lay down grass basically.
Right.
It just grows to a certain length, minimal amount of water, lays over, it's green the whole time.
Nice.
Possibility.
My concern with that just is, I mean, that gets walked on. That lawn really doesn't lend itself to walking on, laying your surfboard on, and things like that. So.
Yes, Deb.
Just a general note of caution as we enter this era of dealing with all these water issues. It's going to go on for years and years and years. Let's try to not jump at things too quickly, because it sounds quick, easy, wonderful. Let's really be deliberative and really try. I mean, we'll make mistakes along the way, no doubt, but let's try to really try to be real careful with this and not just jump at something because it's the fad or something. Not that we've really done that before, but I can see us doing that. I can see, or a body doing that, that's saying, to say, well, we want to get those numbers down, or we want to do this, or we want to do that, so we'll do that. Let's take it slow and easy and real carefully, because this is going to be with us for a long, long time, even if we do get a rainy year, one of these years. These things are all cyclical, and we might as well, do our homework now. We'll be ready for the next one, the next drought when it comes, and staff will be ready. But I can just kind of sense that this is an opportune time when salespeople are going to be coming in to sell us things and, doing all those kind of things, to these quick fixes for all those things. We just need to be real cautious and careful that we spend our money wisely and try to do projects that'll be good for the long run and good investments of our money, and that we feel pretty good about that are, going to work, for what we want now, and take it step by step.
So I think going back to the questions, Dennis, you said that we should maybe specifically request staff to research. I mean, it sounds like one of them was about the reclamation, recycling, and water retention, capturing, and the cost of such a system, how it would be designed, and what's the most feasible reuse of that water that we may reclaim or capture. The other is concerning the installation of artificial grass. What would be the cost of that? What would be the cost of maintaining that? And I would also like to consider, what if we turned it into just sand, like the beach, on those two lawn areas? What would be the cost of that? What would be, there's certainly this, whether you go with artificial turf or sand, there probably will need to be some change in use regulations on it, or should there be? Need there be or not? Would we not do that? And I think finally the last option is keep it in grass in some form or fashion. Is there an option out there that's less water intensive, that could exist with the reclaimed water that we're going to be the minimum amount we appear to be capturing now? And so, is that a fair summary of?
I'd like to add one more too, if I could, Sam.
Sure.
I'd like to have some kind of value system, and we're weighing out Esplanade Park as compared to Monterey Park, or to Jade Street Park, or to Escalona Gulch Park, where have very little usage. I mean, are we irrigating that now, Steve?
Monterey Park and Jade Street? Yeah, we're irrigating the playing fields.
What about Escalona?
Escalona?
No, I'm sorry. Monterey and...
Noble Gulch?
Monterey Gulch.
Noble Gulch.
Noble Gulch.
Noble Gulch. Very minimally. We do have some irrigation there.
Okay, so could there be a trade-off system here? In other words, keeping this intact for high public use, as compared to taking out Noble Gulch, which has very low community use? Is there a trade-off there that we can make that would make sense water-wise?
I think we just need to look at that and see what we want to do with that location, and whether we want to keep that area green or we want to convert that area. I mean, it's kind of, we need to look at all these areas, I think, kind of individually.
And there's another layer here, and that is the statement we make as a city. There is no one has spoken to me about the irrigation of Noble Gulch Park. I don't know about you folks, but I hear every day about the lawns of the beach, and the showers. It's the place where we make our statement to the most number of residents and visitors. And I know the political message
Right.
isn't always the most positive one, but I think in this case it makes a difference.
Maybe we could ask staff just to include a schedule of our other parks, other grassy areas, and an estimate of how much water we're using and what's that costing us at these other locations, just so that it creates some awareness and it's in front of us as we grapple through, which I view this is the most public location that we're dealing with, and I think it is probably the one that we should tackle first, but then we'll have the list and the schedules of the other ones that then maybe can come up in the proper order. So is that a fair sense of the direction to staff? Does staff feel clear about?
So I wrote down the list you had, looking at more information on artificial lawns, looking more information on reclamation systems and what our options would be, how we would consider use regulations in the park if they need to change. Options on keeping the grass, or like the mayor mentioned, better options for the type of grass we install, and Dennis's idea of saving water in other parks and trying to keep this lawn here as part of that. And then what I'll do, the one thing we're kind of eliminating, and that's good to kind of eliminate options, is the redesign at this point. We're going to try and keep what we have there, get us through until a future time that we'll look at the redesign of the park.
Well, I think so. I mean, is the
I would support
consensus
that.
on the...
Yeah, I agree with
right,
that.
Right.
I think that's
Okay.
too much to
But
choose.
you
That's
did
fine.
mention the beach part.
The beach part, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I want to make sure that my idea gets in there.
Beach lawn.
So.
Got it.
More beach.
Right.
That'll do perfect.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Well,
We
thank
take
you.
the seawall out?
And, well, I don't think you need to take this, well, you could, but, I mean, I don't think you need to take the seawall out. Just move it back about, 20 feet.
We're getting complaints from the restaurants and some of the merchants around there that since we've let that grass die and go to sand and dirt, that the wind blows dust into
Other
the
way.
village. So as we bring the beach closer to where we're doing business, we're going to hear more and more about it.
Yeah, well,
Just to throw something else into the mix.
well,
Why
sure,
not?
yes. I mean, there are all these consequences to whatever it is that we do.
I think this
And
would be
so-
a great field trip for someone to go down the coast and check it out and see what other beach communities are doing
tell you, if you
at
do
their
Stephanie,
public
are you
spaces
volunteering
along the
to do that?
beach. That would be a great city
I'll tell you what,
trip.
if you do that,
for
Stephanie, start with
investigation.
Santa Barbara, and Jamie will back me on this one. They have one of the most beautiful public beaches in the state of California.
True.
Large lawn areas to sand.
Yeah. Well,
They-
I'll volunteer for that if anybody.
Well, I learned that I think it's Seal Beach, actually moves sand to form a groin to protect their beach during the summertime. And they buy sand every year. They have lots of money, and they buy sand to fill in there. I mean, there's a whole different things going on down there in Southern California
Yeah.
than are going on here.
Well, I think to close on this particular agenda item, I would like to note, I mean, it is a bit ironic, but I think it's a demonstration of how quickly things change. In 2011, we had a flood and we were dealing with too much water, and here it is just 3 years later, and we're dealing with not enough water. And things may very well change again. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Interesting conversation.
Hey, one more thing, Steve. Does the city have any water rights on SoCal Creek?
We have I believe it's a 3 CFS right for fire protection and recreational use. But there's a caveat in that water right that we cannot take water if it reduces anybody's use upstream. It's a very odd kind of water right, I think. But
Since we're at the bottom of the water line.
Yeah, I know.
It doesn't affect upstream, but what is being lost to the ocean, that would be what we were taking, right? That's really.
yeah, but up to 3 CFS.
How much is that? What does that mean?
Right now, going out of the creek, I think there's about 1 CFS.
Wow.
But it's for recreational use. I'm not exactly sure, or fire protection. So I'm not sure what we could then use it for. It's not for irrigation, I don't think.
Okay, I'm going to move us on to the next agenda item, which is item 9B, which is the consider acceptance of artwork from the former Capitola Book Cafe. The recommended action is to accept or reject the application for donation of artwork submitted by the Capitola Book Cafe for 13 paintings created by the artist Gene Holton. I think that some of the art is sitting up here behind us on the podium.
Do you want to put it on
And
the
so, yeah, is there, maybe we could put it out in front so people can see what we're talking about and...
Lovely.
So before we begin, I do want to thank the owners of the Capitola Book Cafe for offering this donation of what is, I think, historical Capitola. But, hi Lisa, you're going to give us the staff report?
Sure, I'll make it brief.
Sure.
So you're right, the Capitola Book Cafe, which recently closed, has the owners donated the artwork you have here, and then I have more of the pictures attached to the back of your staff report to the city. And we have a process by which we accept donations, and it's outlined in the municipal code. Very briefly, in summary, the donation goes before the Art and Cultural Commission for their review, and they did that at their last meeting in August. And there's a value assigned, there's the pictures of and an application that goes with everything. I contacted the actual artist, and because one of the requirements from the municipal code is a release from the artist, and he actually had no interest in, he didn't feel it was his place to release any interest, since he did it on a commission to the Capitola Book Cafe. So he wanted to just waive his rights, and he didn't feel he needed to put it in writing either. So the Art and Cultural Commission, as I said, had reviewed the paintings, and they are recommending acceptance of the donation. And now it's before the council as part of the process to determine whether they would like to reject the donation or accept it. And at this point, just accepting or rejecting, there's no plan for the display of these yet. And that's it.
Thank you, Lisa. Are there questions? Yes, Ann.
Where would they be stored if they were accepted?
The museum will store them at their facility up at Bay Avenue. It's a storage facility.
Dennis?
Lisa, is there a reason that they're donated to the city and not the museum?
I think the city has to accept the donation, not the museum. That's our policy, and then it's the city.
There are a lot of
who makes
things
the
are donated to the
determination.
museum that with city council has nothing to do with. I don't know why. Why are we?
I think the value, the idea that the largeness of this donation, it's quite significant compared to any of the other donations that we received. Small value donations that the museum received, like photographs or minor artifacts, wouldn't necessarily come under this. And this is one of the first donations we've ever actually received under the municipal code since we've had that in place.
And what did the museum committee recommend?
It didn't need to go before the museum committee. It's the Art and Cultural Commission is the steward of acceptance as per the municipal code of donations like this.
And what did the Arts and Cultural Commission have to say about this, Michael?
They approved acceptance of it for the city council. They recommended acceptance of it by the city council.
And what are we going to do with them?
Store them until we build a new library and then display them.
Or museum, whichever comes
The
first.
library will have more space in the museum forever, even the current library.
Are these pieces of art that need to be in a conditioned environment?
You know, that I can check with the artist and see what he recommends, but I did tell him where they were being stored, and that is a controlled environment, at the especially controlled environment, because we have lots of museum artifacts in there.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from council members? Seeing none, a member of the public wish to address the council on this item? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public comments and bring it back for council for deliberation and decision to accept
Move
or
approval that
reject.
we accept?
There's a motion to accept. Is there a second?
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And thanks once again to the owners of the Capitola Book Cafe. Which brings us to item 9C, which is a presentation of the Community Development Department Work Program. And the recommended action is that the City Council accept the presentation that Rich is about to give us. Hi, Rich.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Thank you. I'm before you tonight to update you on what the department is currently working on, projects that we anticipate coming around the corner, and then some work that we do see further down the road. So as you're aware, the Community Development Department is comprised of the building and planning divisions. We operate with an approximately $695,000 annual budget, and that and 4.5 full-time equivalent staff. In the building division, we have a building official and a building inspector. And in planning, we have the director, a senior planner, and a half-time assistant planner. We also do use part-time contract planners to help us with our affordable housing programs and grant writing. And we occasionally hire an as-needed contract planner, typically to help process larger-scale discretionary projects, such as the Monarch Cove Hotel proposal. So the functions in building, they're primarily a life safety organization. They issue building permits, do plan checks and inspections, do code enforcement for building violations, and then they do the work every 3 years to update our building codes in compliance with state law. In planning, we have 5 general functional areas: current planning, which is the discretionary permit processing; our advanced planning; code enforcement for zoning violations; our affordable housing programs; and then grant preparation and administration. So in the building division, some of the things that are currently ongoing, of course, their bread and butter is issuing building permits and doing inspections. This past fiscal year, they issued 410 building permits with a $17 million total building valuation. That was up slightly in terms of permit counts from the previous year when we had 403 and an $11 million valuation. The difference there is largely due to Toyota, who paid their fees this year, and that gave us quite a boost in revenue. They're active in code enforcement. There's always a few simultaneous building code violation cases that are ongoing. Green building program administration they're responsible for. Something we're going to be looking at as we update our zoning ordinance. And they're also working on deploying a new and improved permit tracking software. The software we had is really antiquated. It's over 10 years old. It's dysfunctional, and so we're currently replacing that. Some of the things in the pipeline for building, we are looking to get an ADA certification for our building inspector. Currently, we contract those services out. It's a relatively minor cost. We'd like to bring that expertise in-house so that we can reduce our contract obligations. I mentioned the green building ordinance update that we'll be embarking on this year. And we also want to create a lot more customer service guidance documents, frequently asked questions and instructions to help simplify the process, particularly for the mom and pops that come over the counter and want to build an addition to the house, so that they have a better understanding of the process and what's expected of them to get through as painlessly as possible. A little longer term, we'd like to develop a web-based building permit cost estimator. We frequently get questions about how much a permit's going to cost. I think it would be a great tool so that somebody could log on from home, enter some simple data, and it spit out an approximate cost to obtain a building permit. And then expanding and improving our website content, keeping that current, and making it more information available to the public. In building, their work distribution, 85% of their time we estimate is spent on permits and inspections, with about 10% dedicated towards code enforcement, and then a minor 5% towards code updates and maintenance. So in planning, with the current planning functions, some of the things we're working on now are discretionary permit processing. We issued 185 permits during the last fiscal year. 52 of those required a public hearing either before the Planning Commission and or the City Council. That was up slightly from the previous fiscal year when we had 166 permits and 48 public hearings. There's 2 major projects that we have currently in-house: the Monarch Cove Hotel, which everyone's familiar with, and we also have a condominium conversion proposal of the Antigua Apartments that would amend just about every code in the city and would be quite a work effort if it goes forward. Some potential future projects, I think everyone is somewhat familiar with most of these. The Village Hotel is still out there. We do talk with the applicant of that project every few months to get an update. There's nothing coming in the immediate future, but they still do anticipate processing entitlements for that project. The new and expanded library that we touched on earlier in tonight's council meeting. The Rispin Mansion Park improvements, as the council knows, we did receive a $383,000 grant this past year to help fund some of that work, and we're currently working on developing a scope of work with Public Works, and that project will be moving forward this year. In the next month or so, we'll be talking about possible options to redevelop this property and to reclaim the lower Pack Cove parking lot, turn it into a park, and provide a parking structure in the rear of this property. And then there's the 38th Avenue Senior Apartments. That project the council approved last year. We've been receiving many inquiries from interested buyers of that project about how they could amend it and do something slightly different. So that has a potential to come back and be processed in the near future. Advanced planning, as you all know, we completed the general plan update this past summer, and we are right now turning our focus towards a zoning code update. We're currently doing some stakeholder interviews. We have a public survey available on the web that's been getting very positive responses. Once we do update the zoning code, I think as you all know, we're going to have to get approval from the Coastal Commission and update our local coastal program. We anticipate that effort will take 9 to 15 months following local adoption. We're also currently working on the city's initial climate action plan. That's something that I'd like to have before you next spring. We're going to be presenting some information to the Commission on the Environment at their next meeting this month, and we'll be doing some workshops subsequently with the Planning Commission and City Council. We're also working with the Finance Department right now to update our fee schedule. The goal there is to improve cost certainty for our customers in a cost-neutral manner. We'd like to convert a lot of our deposit accounts to flat fees to reduce the necessary administration in City Hall, and also, as I mentioned, to provide more certainty to our customers when they come in and apply for permits. We'll also try to restructure a little bit, eliminate some obsolete fees, consolidate where we can, and simplify the overall process. It's also that time again for the housing element update. The RENA numbers were approved by AMBAG and subsequently the state this summer. And on this past month we did issue a consultant RFP to help us with that process. Deadline for proposals is tomorrow. So we'll be moving through that process this fall. Some of the things around the corner and further down the horizon. When we went through the general plan update process, we heard a lot of desire to develop a historic resource preservation program. That's something we'd like to do. Right now we don't have the bandwidth to start working on that, but it's high on our priority list as soon as we have the resources available to get moving on it. We also have action items in the general plan to develop new and revised residential and commercial design guidelines and to update our noise ordinance, subdivision ordinance, as well as implement the action items that will come out of the climate action plan once that's adopted. In terms of code enforcement, as you know, we're primarily a complaint-based code enforcement program. We typically receive between 60 and 80 total code cases per year. Typically, you have to investigate those complaints, verify that they actually are violations, and then go into an enforcement. Most of those cases are resolved cooperatively, but those that aren't do oftentimes necessitate significant staff time and resources to resolve. We do some proactive code enforcement. Those are typically ones that involve life safety violations, primarily through building permit issues. When we presented this same presentation to the Planning Commission, one of their concerns was that they would like to see more of a across-the-board proactive code enforcement program and the resources dedicated to do that work, and they asked that we report their recommendations to you in that regard. Our affordable housing program, some of the things that we currently have going on, we have our security deposit program that's administered by the Housing Authority, our emergency assistance housing program that we'll be talking about in the next item. Our longstanding inclusionary or affordable housing program. There's a number of loans that we've issued in the past through various housing programs that require ongoing monitoring. We monitor and enforce our row home regulatory agreements with many of the parks here in town. And then we routinely do income and asset certifications for applicants who wish to participate in those programs. A couple things that we'd like to do in the near future is to reinstate the residential rehabilitation program and our mortgage assistance program. We did apply for a grant this past spring. We should be getting word on that this month, but as of today, we don't know if we'll get that money or not. So in terms of grant administration, our work primarily is to identify grant opportunities to fulfill unfunded needs that the city has. We prepare our grant applications, and then if they're awarded, there's a lot of administration, management, and reporting work that goes along with that. Some of the ongoing reporting and administration work we do is associated with Bay Avenue Senior Apartments, our Prop 84 grant that actually just recently closed out, the DRI grant, and then we did get this recent grant to fund improvements at the Rispin property. I mentioned the $500,000 CDBG application we have for some affordable housing programs. We're waiting to hear on that. We continue to look for grant opportunities to help us do some analysis of the Stockton Avenue Bridge and identify some solutions to the problems there. To relocate our emergency responders out of the floodplain and tsunami zone, which is something that seems like we should be able to find funding for, but so far we've been unsuccessful. And we've also started looking around and talking to people to see if there's any monies out there that could help us make some improvements and upgrade the wharf, and that's something that's ongoing. Process and operational improvements, you know, these are projects that don't necessarily have a beginning and an end date. They're ongoing efforts to improve our service delivery and our efficiency. Some of the things we're currently working on in that regard is to develop a standard conditions of approval manual. We've got some standard conditions developed now, approved by the Planning Commission for residential and commercial projects, and we're continuing to work through that. We'd like to prepare an applicant's permit processing guide, again, to help educate our customers when they come across the counter so they know what to expect, how long things are going to take, what fees from the city and outside the city they can expect to pay. And then we also want to create a better set of internal operating procedures and checklists to improve consistency when we process our permits and to increase transparency. Some of the things we'd like to do in the future, I mentioned before, improving the website, providing electronic applications so folks can fill them out at home and bring them in completed, guidance documents, and then provide more information on just, you know, the permits that are active in town and what their statuses are. So for planning, our work distribution is distributed as shown here. About 60% of our time is spent on current planning activities. I'd estimate about 25% on advanced planning, 10% on affordable housing, and then 5% on code enforcement. So some of our department challenges are, you know, we have a number of concurrent, simultaneous, high-priority projects right now. We're working on the zoning ordinance, the climate action plan, the housing element update has started, and then we have our regular routine work with discretionary permits, affordable housing, and code enforcement. There's also the LCP update that's going to be coming around the corner once we adopt our zoning ordinance. We've talked about it in these chambers a couple of times. There's uncertainty there. We do have to get state approval to do the things we want to do locally, unfortunately, and it may take a little bit of time and effort to get us all on the same page. In terms of future work commitments, we have a number of overdue policy and ordinance updates. If you go through our municipal code, you'll notice that many of our ordinances were drafted in the 40s and 50s and then passed in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And the result is oftentimes we're left with a set of ordinances that don't really apply to modern standards, and it makes administration very difficult. So those are things, as time and resources allow, we'd really like to tackle and modernize. There is a series of general plan action items that we're going to need to tackle, and I did include a list in your packets just so you're aware of those items. The climate action plan is is going to have a number of action items that are going to require staff time, resources, and that's something that we're going to have to navigate very carefully. Housing elements typically have action items. This one, I'm cautiously optimistic that it's not going to be as painful as some of the past ones. Our RHNA numbers are reasonable. We don't have a lot of opportunity sites to identify during this cycle. So hopefully that's a little bit easier than what our past experiences have been.
Can I ask a question about that? Can Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Oh, can I just ask a question? Can we not hire a consultant for it and do it in-house, or hire a consultant for a I mean, we won't decide this tonight, but just hire someone for a real modest amount of money? Not spend.
Sure, I think when that
That's just-
when that comes back
Yeah,
to
don't
us.
plan on $100,000 again per consultant for this, again, to change a few paragraphs and a few numbers.
So there,
And
HCD
that's
did.
just my feeling.
HCD, the State Housing and Community Development Department, did adopt a new streamlined process that's available for this cycle for the first time. I hear generally good things about it. It's supposed to reduce not only the amount of time that local agencies have to commit to the process, but also the state, and there's supposed to be a resultant decrease in cost. I did get one proposal back. It's far less than $100,000. I didn't budget anywhere near that amount for it, so I think it's going to be a palatable expenditure. Certainly it's something we could try to tackle in-house, but it would come at the expense of other work. So it would just be a matter of priorities. Finally, in terms of challenges, just managing increased workload within our resource limitations is going to be a challenge, particularly when we have the climate action plan, our housing element general plan action items. These things tend to pile up, oftentimes have requirements for new studies. Those studies beget more studies. So we're trying to manage that as well as we can, working to set and maintain our priorities, increase our efficiencies where we can, and then as needed, using contract staff support to help us get over those spikes in workload. So with that, I'll conclude my presentation and be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Yes, Mike.
No real question, but just a point of interest. I had a meeting on Sunday with some current water board members. They had no idea that RHNA numbers even existed.
Oh, really?
When posed the question regarding a moratorium, I asked them how they would square that with our requirements, and they didn't know we had requirements. So,
interesting.
Just a thought.
What were the actual numbers?
Off the top of my head, I want to say our numbers was 146, which is the same as it was during the last cycle. The only units that were built during this past housing cycle were at Bay Avenue. I believe there was 8 low-income units there. So we'll need to find a new site for those 8 units. Otherwise, I think all our opportunity sites remain from the last cycle.
Yeah. Okay. Other questions? Yes, Dennis.
Rich, did I hear you say 9 to 15 months after our adoption of the general plan and the zoning ordinance for coastal declares?
That's my best guesstimate. I mean, a typical LCP amendment is 6 to 9 months. This is going to be a much more comprehensive update than a typical, LCP amendment where you're looking at one policy item. So I think there's going to be some negotiations and a lot of discussions before we get their blessing.
So we're really talking from today, probably 2 years before we see any change in our zoning ordinance?
Well, I think what we'll have is this weird interim period where we have a new zoning ordinance outside the coastal zone and our old antiquated zoning ordinance in the coastal zone until we get
How
their
much
buy-off
of cities
on it.
outside the coastal zone is very
Everything on the other side of the highway.
Some of North 41st is outside
That's
the coastal
it.
zone along the highway.
Is there
now.
is there any thought about taking important issues within the zoning ordinance and move those forward before we go through the full process?
Yeah, I mean, we plan on having some discussions. Once we start developing the scope of work there and we get policy direction from the council on where we want to go with some of the more meaty policy issues, we intend to sit down with Coastal Commission staff, talk about it, and identify if there's going to be any problems so that we can work on them early and not get hung up late in the game.
I think that's a good idea. I can't imagine waiting 2 years for that zoning ordinance to change.
Yeah.
Have we provided any affordable housing since the last housing element update?
I don't. Go ahead.
Councilmember Norton, yes, we have. You'll recall that we participated in the acquisition of the Castle Mobile Home Park with redevelopment agency funds, which somewhere between 80 and 90 affordable units were deed restricted there. In addition, I know that Pearson Court was completed, which had an inclusionary unit. And I think it's... I think that those are the primary, whether the beach villas and Bay Avenue occurred, because I think the last one started in 2010.
Turner Lane, but maybe that was before that?
Turner Lane was before.
Yeah.
I know the Castle was certainly in the period, and Pearson Court as well.
Okay. And this is a tough comparison, but the city of Santa Cruz is so successful at grant writing. And I know that they have the staff to do that. Would there be any consideration, they seem to do every project under grants from somewhere. They're very, very good at successful at getting that. Would there be any consideration of increasing some staff time or adding another half-time position to do grant writing, someone with experience in this type of thing? I just think that there's a whole bundle of potential money out there that we're passing by just by not having the experience or getting into the fray with this.
It's not something that we've actively considered, but certainly it's something we could explore. I think before I would want to jump into that, I would want to know, is there going to be the benefit for the cost? Is there a lot of grant opportunities we're just missing because we don't have the proper people, or is it something that's worth the money?
Thank you.
Okay, any other council questions? Seeing none, I'll ask any member of the public wish to address the council concerning the Community Development Department. Seeing none, I'll bring it back for further discussion by council members. And I will probably just take this opportunity to emphasize, Rich, that we are doing the survey on the web concerning our zoning ordinance and the changes to the zoning ordinance. So if anybody out there has comments, suggestions, recommendations, frustrations, problems with the current zoning ordinance, please go to the website and send us your thoughts. We're looking for opportunities to make changes and particular issues that residents may come across as they deal with the city's zoning. And Rich, that survey is going to be available just through September 30th?
Correct.
The end of the month? Okay. Will there be any opportunity to extend that? Or
we could. If there's still an interest out there, we can certainly extend it another month.
All right. Well, I did want to emphasize that and let everybody know that they should go. And this is one of the biggest and most monumental changes, fundamental changes that I think that we'll be going through right now. I mean, it really is about policies that hit the street, really, in your neighborhoods. And so everybody pay attention and participate. Other comments from Councilman? Yes, Stephanie.
I just want to say thank you. What a comprehensive, impressive report. What a great history and a synopsis of what we're doing and where we're going and things we need to do. It's great. I mean, that was very thorough, and I think it's a really, really good report. Thank you very much for doing it.
One other question.
Yeah.
It's probably no surprise or secret that Mark Wheeler may be contemplating retirement. He's our head building inspector. Any ideas about any restructuring? Maybe a half-time chief building inspector, drawing on the experience of old and current retired, great and wonderful building inspectors?
We're currently discussing our options and trying to develop a transition plan. It will come up quickly, so we're trying to move pretty swiftly, but we don't have anything set in stone at this point.
There are opportunities out there, and not that Brian isn't great. He's probably a little ways from chief building inspector, and Mark Wheeler is absolutely irreplaceable. I can't imagine another human on the planet that does what he does. And I'll let my comment rest there. As a contractor.
Yeah. Dennis?
When you create a system of extensive review of all projects, which the city has, I mean, there's no jurisdiction that requires everything to go to the Planning Commission. For coastal permits, and I'll give you a comparison to the County of Santa Cruz, if you're going to do a backyard addition up to 500 square feet, that you can go, in coastal zone, you can go right to for a building permit because it doesn't affect anyone. This city requires those people to go through a coastal permit and discretionary permits to get that. Additional cost to clients and additional 4 to 6 months in the process. And the city does it fast. I'm not complaining about it. The city does it fast. But its staff is burdened with taking care of things that aren't important to good design or in the community. What happens when you take staff time to do these kind of permits, what it does, it takes away from things that are really important in the community. And so, as far as their time and expense, you have 2.5 planners to cover this whole city. We have a huge diversity of land use in this community, from commercial to residential to mobile home parks, and a really diverse amount of issues that deal with land use planning. The zoning ordinance is so antiquated that even interpretation and getting correct interpretation to counter is difficult for staff to do. So if it's difficult for staff to do, how difficult it is for a client on the outside and coming to it. We need to take this system and make it workable. And we need to free our planners up to do things that are important to this community instead of taking care of these babysitting chores that are just real burdensome to their time. Supportive of my staff.
Right. And in closing, yes, thank you, Reg, for the report. Very comprehensive. I did have one follow-up question for you. And within the last year, the council dealt with an appeal of a project that kind of went askew between when the Planning Commission had approved it in the design, some of the design elements, and then by the time they got their certificate of occupancy. We missed a little, I guess there was some miscommunications. And are we working, have we developed new protocols or that intersection so that we can kind of get involved or notice if projects are not staying consistent with their planning commission's directives?
Yeah, we've done a couple of things to date. One is to provide better education to our customers by, we give them a form early on, we explain it to them that your approved project is what you can build. Any deviations from that, no matter how minor you may think they are, you need to come back to the city, or the consequences might be going back before the Planning Commission and spending more time and money. In addition, we're also made some changes to the inspection, so a planner goes out with the builder when they do the rough framing, and they sign that off, so that if there's different materials on site, they would notice there's also another set of eyes to look at the architecture of it. And then finally, there's going to be a little bit of ordinance work there. Some jurisdictions have substantial conformance reviews or minor deviation processes. We don't really have that. We have a simple sentence that says any significant changes must go back to the Planning Commission. And that leaves a lot of room for interpretation and disagreement. We want to add clarity to that.
Sure. Okay, good. Thank you for following up with that. So with nothing else, is there a motion to accept the report?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously, which will bring us to the next and last item on tonight's agenda, which is item 9D. This is consider an agreement with the Community Action Board of Santa Cruz County to administer the Emergency Housing Assistance Program for fiscal year 14-15. At this time, I do want to disclose that my wife works for the Community Action Board, and therefore I must recuse myself from this discussion and final vote. So I'm going to turn this over to Vice Mayor Norton, and I'm going to step out of the room, and I'll take this opportunity to say good night to everyone. Thank you.
Good night,
Good night,
and thank
Mr.
you.
Mayor.
And before you go, Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
during oral communications at the end, I was just going to ask you if you would send a card to the city of Napa on behalf of the mayor with our best wishes for their recovery after the earthquake.
Certainly.
I brought it up at the league meeting. I said, is anybody helping Napa? Do they need anything? Do they need money, volunteers? You know, how are they? What are they doing? Nobody seemed to know anything.
The Red
But-
Cross has deployed to Napa, and once again, Santa Cruz
Yeah.
is the largest
Contingent
number
of
of volunteers
I bet.
deployed to a single disaster.
Commendable. Yeah, I would be very happy to do
Yes,
that.
do that on behalf
Jimmy,
of
yeah,
the
if you
city,
could
just
prepare
some
something
sort
for
of
me, yeah.
card or something that just says, we're thinking about you, we're there with you, and best wishes, and if there's anything we can do, please let us know.
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Sam. The item before us is Community Action Board's contract for the Emergency Housing Assistance Program. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Councilmember Norton. The Emergency Housing Assistance Program provides emergency short-term financial assistance to low-income households to prevent eviction and homelessness. The Community Action Board has historically administered the program for Capitola, and as you recall, during the last budget cycle, we did allocate $30,000 for fiscal year 13-14. The monies were provided via our housing successor monies. And as you recall, there is no long-term funding source for this program available. It's kind of a year-by-year commitment where if monies are available in the successor account, we can use those, but there isn't a steady stream of money like we had during redevelopment. To date, the Community Action Board has spent $22,169, and that money was used to assist 6 Capitola households to prevent eviction or foreclosures. So our recommendation for you tonight is to provide an additional $30,000 allocation for fiscal year 14-15. Funds were included in the adopted budget. Alternatively, you could allow funds to accumulate to help finance a larger future affordable housing project. And with that, I will conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. Questions to staff?
Would you explain the mechanism of the accumulation of funds for a larger project?
When loans that we've issued in the past are paid off, we collect those, and with interest, we put them in the housing successor account. Over time, that fund would grow and would enable us to fund a larger project if we waited long enough. Alternatively, we can help some of these programs with smaller allocations on a year-by-year basis.
So we could do both, basically, continue to allocate on a yearly basis, and as these funds are repaid, build up our housing fund.
We could, but the amount of money that comes in on an annual basis is usually, it doesn't add up very fast, particularly if we're funding some of these smaller programs.
Well, no, well, what I'm saying is, I agree with the funding of the $30,000, but wouldn't we also be accumulating it above and beyond that with the repayment? I'm missing the either-or concept here.
Right now, we don't get much more than $30,000 a year in repayments. Some years less, some years more.
Right.
There are a couple big ones out there, though. The Bay Avenue Senior Project and the Castle Mobile Home Estates, and I think one of the other mobile home parks. If and when the repayment terms of those trigger, then we'll be looking at more significant repayments. But right now, this sort of does it for the balance that comes in. There's not a lot of money coming in.
And when you're asking for the $30,000 allocation, that is coming from successor agencies, coming from...
Yes.
Right. And is that above and beyond the repayments? You understand where my confusion is?
Yeah, I understand where the confusion is.
I'm sorry.
The revenue each year into the housing successor varies. It depends on how many loans are repaid. In general, $30,000 to $50,000 a year seems to get repaid, some years less, some years more.
Okay.
So the point being that if we spend $30,000 a year, the fund will probably not be growing significantly until we see some of these larger projects begin to repay.
Well, we can be sustaining by allocating that $30,000 to use and still incrementally grow, so that the option is to not fund it and let it just grow, or to continue to provide these valuable services to people on a year-to-year basis. Easy choice. Thank you. Got it.
It's an easy choice. I mean, I think you've got the point. The housing assistance program, keeping people in their homes, is incredibly valuable. In the long term, it pays off dividends for all of us.
Absolutely.
When someone loses their home and becomes homeless, the costs on society mount exponentially.
Yes.
This is a valuable program, so I think that helps clarify things.
Good. Thank you.
Is there any member of the public who would like to address the Community Action Board's contract? Please step forward.
Good evening. First of all, I'm so impressed by the city of Capitola. Everything that's going on and all the discussion is amazing. But on the behalf of Community Action Board, I want to thank you for your past support. The city of Capitola has supported us for many years, and we were able to help 6 households stay in their home. The reasons were varied from unemployment, running out, illnesses, somebody having HIV, losing their wallet, not paying their rent. So it's real. The problem is real. And the fact that we were able to keep 6 people in their home is pretty awesome. So thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Could you give your name for public record, please?
Norma Sanchez.
Thank you Thanks, Norma. Back to council.
I will move the agreement with the Community Action Board of Santa Cruz.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, that concludes the program for this evening. And the speed limit in Capitola is 25 miles an hour. And if you drive 25, everyone behind you will have to drive 25. Thank you.
Thank you.